of life, though harmless they seem, my beats of life and a Savior. He is my all, there's nothing between, nothing between my soul and the Savior, so that His blessed face may be seen, nothing preventing the least of His favor. Keep the way clear, let nothing between, nothing between, and many hard trials, though the world were against me convene, watching with prayer and much self-denial, triumph at last with nothing between, nothing between my soul and the Savior, so that His blessed face may be seen, nothing preventing the least of His favor. Keep the way clean, let nothing between.
Good afternoon. We want to take this opportunity to welcome you back to our afternoon program. We hope that all of us have been refreshed, and we hope that other people will come and join us. So we are going to begin right away, and as we begin, we are going to begin with the opening song, song number 367, Rescue the Perishing. And after that, Sister Rose Misati will continue with the afternoon program. Sister Lexi.
Raise the perishing, care for the dying, snatch them in pity from sin and the grave. Weep o'er the erring one, lift up the fallen, tell them of Jesus the mighty to save. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save. Though there is lighting, He still He is waiting the penitent child to receive. Plead with them honestly, plead them gently. He will forgive if they only believe. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save. Rescue the perishing, duty demands it. Strength for thy labor, the Lord will provide. Back to the narrow way, patiently win them. Tell the poor wanderer our Savior has died. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save.
Shall we pray? Our Heavenly Father, we come once more this afternoon. We just want to thank you for having been with us in the part of the morning. Thank you for the blessings that we have received this day, O Lord. And Lord, as we come to this other part of the program, we pray that your presence and your mercies may continue to be with us, to lead us even as we continue to discuss this pertinent topic in our lives, oh Lord. Open our minds, our hearts, so that we may receive it and so that it may help us to be able to change our ways and be ready for your second coming. In Jesus' name I pray.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again. I don't know whether there's a possibility of having the people who are at the back to move to the front. Is it possible? Because we are few and I just feel like we are scattered. If you can come to the front, so that way I don't have to project my voice and yet there's a lot of space. Thank you so much for accepting to come. Just come to the front. So I just want to thank you for having come back again, so that we can continue having the sharing of this very difficult topic. I just trust that the people inside here are adults, maybe unless there's a child that is breastfeeding, but I think if there's any other child, I hope there's a program for them outside. We can have the children outside so that we can have this session for adults, at least anybody above the age of 18. Eh? So as we shared in the morning, I don't know whether I said this, that out of all the adverse childhood experiences that somebody can go through, childhood sexual abuse is one of the worst, that leaves long-lasting consequences, implications, and impact. And many times what I have found, especially in Africa, is that many of us do not know that some of the things that people experience or that we hear, they're actually sexual abuse. In that regard, an elderly man shared with me this year in January. It's about 70 years now. He shared with me this experience because he said that his wife left him. Well, he divorced with the wife, and he was trying to come back. He was trying to ask for reconciliation because she's still there. The children are now grown. So he had really tried everything he could to have the wife reconcile, but she completely and totally refused. So one of the requests he made to me was to try and ask if there's a way she can not only forgive, but accept him back. And she said she has forgiven him, but she's not taking him back. So this is one of the things that he confessed to me with tears in his eye. He said for all the years they were married, he now realizes that he had raped his wife all the time. He didn't know. At the time, he didn't know. And he said after having studied what he has stood and understood and looking at the root cause of their struggles up to the time that he left home and he divorced her, he said that he realizes that everything, any sexual intimacy that happened in that home, those were his words. He had raped his wife all that time. But he didn't know, honestly, that it was marital rape. He came to that realization because they lived abroad. So probably he got exposed and he learned, and because he has served as a church elder in the church for very long. So he was saying he carries that guilt so heavy upon him, and he was 70 years now, and he said he's a great speaker, widely sought after in the area of righteousness by faith, but it's so hard for him now being lonely in old age. He tried to talk to the children, to talk to their mother, of course, which is the wrong thing to do, but they told him, it's up to you and mom. So I digress. My subject is not about them being divorced or whatever it is, but my subject is, the point I was focusing on is, what I have learned through experience is that sometimes, even as church members, we either participate, we enable, we ignore abuse because it has been normalized so much in some of our cultures that we don't think there's anything wrong with certain things. And yet the impact, it continues to affect us. Even when we deny, even when we don't know, the choices we make, the way we parent, the way we relate in our marriages, our relationships, it still points to the fact that we continue perpetuating sexual abuse. So this afternoon, I want to give us a few tips. I will make my presentation very short because I know we have a concert happening, and I also want to give you an opportunity to feedback to me because I was doing much of the talking, being a sermon in the morning. So I'll spend a short time just to equip us as parents, as grandparents, as uncles, as aunties, as teachers, how to help our children to understand in a biblical and scientific way, identify abuse, and even avoid, most importantly. And when a child has been abused or they have reported, what do we do? Because that's what I've seen. Many times we hear and we are like, so what exactly am I supposed to do? Then by keeping quiet, we encourage it happening. Before I go to my sharing, because this is something I wish I knew when I was raising my children, or I wish that my parents knew when they were raising me. Before I go to that, I want to share with you an experience that I went through. I was not born in an Adventist home, so there were many wrong things that happened in my family. My mother, as a matter of fact, and some of my family members are not Adventist as we speak today. So I was not born in an Adventist home. I was not born in a Christian home. There was alcohol, and there were a lot of wrong things that can happen, as you know it, in an non-Adventist home. When I went to high school, I gave my life to the Lord when I was in Form 1 because but by God's grace, I went to a school that was a Sabbath school of one of our main churches. I'm not naming the church because the story is related. So I was in that school. It was a Sabbath school to one of the main churches here in Nairobi. So there were people allocated for school ministry. So they would come and talk to us and mentor us. So I happened to be in the church, and I gave my life. I went through baptismal class. I was baptized in Form 1. So I became very active. I was serving in the church. Up to the time I completed my high school, my Form 4, I was the leader of the SDA group. So I managed to interact with a lot of leaders from the church who used to come for school ministry, being the leader. So when I joined university, I joined the University of Nairobi. And so the first place I went to church, the first Sabbath, I attended that church because, that's a church I knew. So I went, I met people that I know. I met some of the leaders who used to come for school ministry. So one of the leaders, the one who used to work very closely with us and was very generous with us and very relatable, he asked where I stay. So I told him where I stay, and he said, I think he said something like, I can drop you, because he was going to be with the youth at Arboretum, so he said, I can drop you on your way. So he dropped me at Box. I was staying at the place called Box, in first year. So he dropped me at Box, and he went. And during the week, I'm coming from class, I found him at the Box, like at the reception area, and he had asked for my room number. He had known my room number. So I found him. I didn't think much about it. I thought maybe he had come to check on something. He said, I came to check on you. It sounded a bit weird, but then I was like, okay. He had a business in town. So he said, I went home with my wife to the estate, but I remembered that I had not closed my business. So as I was coming to close my business, I thought I can pass by. I said, okay. Then he realized we were few of us at that time. So he said, oh, you are few. I said, yeah, because all the other students had closed, except those of us who were in medical school. Because for us, our semester was longer. So I said, the ones who are here, the medical, pharmacy, nursing, dentist students who are very few. Then he asked me, what course does your roommate study? I said, my roommate studies computer science. So he said, so you are alone in the room? I said, yeah. Then he said, do they cook for you? Remember all that time, I'm just feeling, this is weird, but I can't explain what, because this man was very instrumental in my faith. He's among the people actually who modeled to me a loving family. I didn't grow up with a father, and my mother was struggling with alcohol. So he used to model to us a very healthy family because he had a beautiful wife that he seemed to love and wonderful children who were very confident, and he would give us my first hymn book I owned. He gave it to us when we were completing as Form 4s. So my thoughts would go, but I'm like, no, what am I thinking about a man of God? He was head deacon at the time in the church. The wife was head deaconess, So I said, okay. So he said, so do they cook for you? I said, no, because we are few, they don't cook in the mess. So we just buy, whatever food from outside. Then he said, actually, I can take you for dinner one of the days. I said, yeah, but I just dismissed it. I went. Sure, one of the days, again, it didn't take long. I may not remember the exact number of days, but get the story. So he came soon after that. He said, I've come. I want to take you for dinner. I said, okay. So he's like, where do you want to go? I don't know much of Nairobi. I said, I don't know. So he said, let me take you. At that time, it was either Nando's or Galitos or Steers, someplace like that. I don't know. So we go to Steers. But as we are driving to town, I'm still wondering. He says, I normally drop my wife, then I go to the gym, so I thought I can pass by. So as we are driving, I don't know what we talked. He had lost his brother, and I'd seen him in the paper. So I said, oh, yeah, sorry. It was very awkward, so I had to look for something to say, because this man was like a father to me. So I said, yeah, you lost your brother. I'm so sorry about it. He said, yeah, and I have so many other brothers. I said, oh, okay. He said, I come from a family of boys. I'm like, oh, okay. Then he says, will you, something like, will you marry one of my brothers? I think he said something like that. I said, oh, I laughed. Then he said, but before you marry one of my brothers, you have to cook for me ugali so that I can taste your ugali before you go to cook for my brother. I said, that's weird. But in my mind, I'm still just thinking he's talking about ugali because this man of God, I just can't imagine. So we go to Steers, and then he said, I could sit and have dinner with you, but I know you are uncomfortable. So I will buy for you. You go eat in your room. So he buys the dinner. Then when you go to the room, he says, it's hard for me to come because my neighbor's daughter stays here in box. So I find it hard to come and visit you. So I started thinking there's something fishy because he's saying the neighbor's daughter. But remember, in my mind, I know the wife so well, and the way he always used to look like he really loves the wife, and I'm just wondering, I'm like, this is funny, but I don't know. Fast forward, let me shorten the story. So one time, I'm in my room, I'm reading, my roommate had gone, so I'm reading in my room in the evening. There were no mobile phones, so I hear the door knocked. So when the door is knocked, I go to open because I'm thinking maybe somebody is coming over. The person who enters the room is this man, and he's wearing a T-shirt and a short. So I'm like, oh, this is funny. But then the way I had said, he goes to the gym. So he enters, immediately he enters, because I used to put the key on my door. He enters and he locks the door. So he gets in like this, and I'm saying, Elder so-and-so, hi, like, you've come. So I'm like, he just enters, he locks the door, and he holds the key. So I'm seated on the seat. There was one chair. He sits on the bed. On that floor, I'm like the only one because people had gone home. So I'm like, and I think he had surveyed and known that I'm the only one. So I'm on that floor. The door is locked. I live like on second floor. First of all, remember, I'm experiencing a lot of cognitive dissonance. Like the person I know, and I'm just wondering what exactly is happening here. This is a father figure. So he sits on the bed, and he says many things, which I don't remember. But what I can remember, he says, I love you, you are so beautiful. So I'm like, huh? Like, I'm not understanding. What do you mean? Then I got to the point, I said, you have such a beautiful wife. Like I'm trying to say something. Then he says, but what does my wife have to do with this? So I can't open the door. I can't jump out of the window. There are no phones. If I shout, nobody will hear. So before I realize, he's on the bed. He pulls me to the bed. So we start wrestling. So one thing I thank God is that my mother had taught us to fight. Okay, maybe it's a bad thing. But me, I told you, I was not raised in an Adventist home. So please, don't start telling me, oh, thou shalt not fight. It wasn't an Adventist home. So we were taught you fight, whatever happened. So I begin to fight. So I'm fighting with him and he's tearing my clothes. So anyway, by the time we are done, my clothes are torn, but I have really fought with him and have said many things. I'm like, I cannot imagine, what, you're an elder, your wife, your child, your what. I said many things I don't remember. Anyway, eventually he left. Do you think, I couldn't even think of telling anybody, I kept quiet. But in my mind, I still could not believe that such a person can want to perpetrate this. He left eventually. I think it became too hard for him. So I went to church the following Sabbath, to that same church, because we didn't have a university church at that time because we were few. So I still used to go to the church. Let me tell you, when I go to this church, it's Holy Communion Sabbath. And now, because he's the head deacon and the wife is the head deaconess, they're all dressed in white. From head, I'm telling you, if I tell you somebody's story, you'll think I'm saying a story. This is my story. It took me very long to talk about it. So, he's in white from head to toe. The wife is in white from head to toe, and they are holding hands as they are walking around trying to make sure the church is in order for Holy Communion. So, as I walk, he comes to me, and he's like, Sister Ross, how are you? We've missed you. Now that shocks me more because I honestly thought I'm crazy. Like I thought I'm sincerely mad because this person, the way he's talking, but I just used to notice something even when we were in high school. The wife would be very uncomfortable when he's talking to us. And we didn't understand why. We used to think she's such a mean wife. He's talking to us and she's always hovering around him. She could stand and not move. She just used to behave in a way that was very uncomfortable. Anyway, let me tell you, the moment he came and he talked to me and the wife hugged me and he said, we've missed you. You need to come and visit us, because I had visited them. My first Sabbath in campus, they had invited me to have lunch at their home. You need to come and visit. Let me tell you, I left church. There was Holy Communion. I couldn't take Holy Communion. I came to my room and I wept and I cried. I was not crying so much by what he had tried to do to me, but the fact that he's in white and he's holding the wife, and in church they're serving Holy Communion and he's behaving pretending like nothing happened. I said, no, this can't be the case. Another Sabbath, we went to Huru Park. It was a Sabbath for the main, all churches in Nairobi. I saw him, I didn't greet him. I saw him with the wife and the children. I actually passed. I'm sure the wife wondered. I passed, that was on Sabbath. The following day, he came to my room. He met me with some other people, he said, and I just told him, please, can you leave? So as I was opening for him to leave, he said, my sister, I just came to ask, how could you treat me like that yesterday? You didn't say hi to me when you met me at Huru Park. I said, this is unbelievable. I cannot believe. Then he said, I just wanted to tell you, you can actually be calling my wife and telling her that you want to come and visit us. So when you tell her you're coming to visit us, she'll obviously agree. So you will come and visit us in my home, then we can have a relationship, and she won't know because you have called her, so she has allowed you to come. I couldn't believe. Now that story, I could not tell anybody because who will believe me? This man was generous, giving everybody stuff, and he had the money. Who would believe me? I kept quiet. I left that story. Years later, I completed university. I was with my husband then. I think we were newly married. We went to another church. Went to a church where we had been worshiping. This man was a preacher. In this church now, where we were attending with my husband, he was a preacher. So I told my husband, that story I've been telling you, this is the man. Church ended. In that church, there was only one entrance. So, and in that church, it was a small church like this. You shake people's hands. You shake the preacher's hands. I could not bring myself to shake hands with this man. But where could I pass? The church had one door. It was a classroom we were using. It had one door. So the other one is closed. You can only pass through that. I braved myself. Now I told my husband, if my husband was a typical kissy, I think we would have had a funeral on Sabbath. But he's not like that. Maybe he's not like me. He's very gentle if you know him. So we go with my husband. He's ahead of me. He shakes the man's hand. And as I'm shaking this man's hand, because there was no way I was leaving, the man comes and embraces me. And he says, oh, my sister, I've really missed you. I just said, I can't. Now this is too much. Because this man is going on as if nothing has happened. Let me tell you, I shared this story with the deaconesses of that church without naming names. I was in a retreat, And I shared with them the story. One deaconess came and asked me, are you talking about so-and-so? I didn't name names. I said yes. She said, oh my goodness, that man has sexually abused people, including me. In the church, he has done a lot. And the people used to report, but ilikuwa tu inafifia hivyo. I said, what? Then I went to Kenyatta University, and I talked to another lady. We were in high school together. She said that man used to come and give me money. So this was his plan. He used to join high school ministry. And while you are in school, that is where he's scouting for his victims. But he would not make any advances. He'll just be good to you and everything. You're seeing a perfect person. The moment you join university, you're an adult. He begins to come and use money, resources, influence, and abuse so many, including the youth in the church. And it's hard to report. Even now, unless somebody has had an experience, if I say the name, some people may never even really believe. Long story short, the wife knew and now understood why she used to behave like that. Every time he would come to school, she would never allow him to talk to us alone. She would always follow and stand and look very hostile. And we didn't know what was happening. Long story short, the wife did what is called Adventist divorce. You know the Adventist divorce, whereby somebody just applies for a green card, you go to abroad, you go to America, so you know. So she applied, and she went. That is common. You're not aware, the Adventist divorce. People just apply, they go. Am I stepping on toes? Anyway, she applied. Her children finished high school. They applied for university abroad. Then she also applied, got a green card, went to America. Then she went to America. Of course, later I heard she married a white man. She died sometime later. So the marriage ended like that. The man, one of my colleagues, my friend, said she met the man miserable, hovering around the face of the earth, very miserable. Now, the thing I want to say is this. That statistic I gave you in the morning of an abuser, by the time they're even reported, actually, not arrested, by the time they are reported, they have abused about 56, minimum, 56 victims. When I've shared my story without naming names, when I've gone to schools or even places among my peers, schools that were Sabbath school of that church, so many ladies have come up and said they were actually abused by this man and by many of the people like that. They were actually abused. It scares me anytime when I think about what could have happened to me that day. I don't know. I just thank God. But you can imagine, even for me at the time, I couldn't even say, I don't even think even my mother or anybody close to me really knows that story up to today. Well, there are many stories like that. But one thing I thank my mom for is that she taught us the skill of self-defense. And she also taught us not to be good girls, because she was widowed in her 20s. And she experienced a lot of abuse in the village. So we practically saw her defending herself against sexual, physical, emotional abuse. We saw it. So she didn't need to tell us much. We just knew it's a hostile world. Na lazima upambane na hali yake. Like you really literally have to fight. But I know that there are many girls or even boys who could not fight like I did at the time. What could have happened to them? Or what has even happened to them? If the man was HIV positive, which I think he was, how many people has he infected? Because I was asking him at that point, you don't know me. You just met me in high school. I've been at home in the village for 2 years. Then he says, you're a good girl. I'm not a good girl. You don't know me. You don't know where I've been, and you just come like this. You want to have sex with me and go and have sex with your wife? You're even telling me to come to your house. We continue having an affair. We under the nose of your wife, and apparently had been hosting a lot of young people in his house. Like you would see the young people, girls especially, who have just come to Nairobi and they have nowhere to stay. He says, we have a big house. You're welcome. They go stay in his house. He takes advantage of them in his house. Continued doing that. For whatever reason, the wife couldn't report or do anything, but she strategized to leave, after the children had left home. So what do you do then as a parent or even as an adult to equip yourself and even the younger people? Number one is that you must acknowledge that there are things that have happened to you, some things that have happened to you that was sexual abuse. Maybe they didn't, but for, I know, vast majority, someone took advantage. Somebody exposed you to the wrong, maybe video or book or something that was beyond your age. Somebody touched you in a way that sexualized you. Somebody talked to you, looked at you in a way. Somebody introduced you to sexual intercourse before you were ready, before you were an adult. As a matter of fact, many young boys, they had their first sexual experience with their house helps at around 13, 14 years, or with older cousins. And because they are the man, they actually don't think they were abused. You know that? They tell me, oh, we had this house help, she was 18, I was 13, she taught me this. But when I'm telling the boy you were abused, he says, but no, I'm the man, I kind of enjoyed it, she introduced me. I said, but no, you were a child. There's no way you could consent. So some, they were abused, and that was the first introduction to sexual experience that awakened desires that are very hard to quench. Some boys in a primary school were telling me a few weeks ago, they were saying, oh, I'm really struggling with sexual desires. I really want to have sex. I can't concentrate on my studies. These are boys in junior high, grade 6, grade 7, class 8. So what was going through my mind is that who has awakened these desires, that the boy can no longer even concentrate because the desires have been awakened so much. So you acknowledge that there are things that might have happened to you, I hope they didn't, that were actually sexual abuse. And maybe look at the impact they have had. Maybe you have sexual shame, or you are over-sexualized or something, or you are very uncomfortable because of what happened to you. So you acknowledge. Number 2, the best way you can direct those experiences or your anger or your frustration or whatever is by being of help to the younger generation. So if you have children, for example, grandchildren, from a very early age, 3-4 years, I've taught this in many places, you need to teach your children their private parts. Their private parts. No one should touch them. No one should see them. No one should lick them. Remember, you need to mention. One of the ladies told me that from a West African country, she said there's a tactic that was used some time back in West Africa by pedophiles. They would apply they would apply sugar in their bodies, especially the private parts, and they would tell children to lick them. You know, children love sugar, obviously. So this happened to her. That's what she was sharing with me. She's in her 40s. So she told me when she remembered this uncle doing this, she doubted her sanity. So she went to talk to her mother and auntie that I can remember Uncle so-and-so making me lick his body, especially his private part, having applied sugar. The family quickly dismissed. They said, oh, no, that uncle was so good, could never have done anything like that. So when she went to research and talk to older people, they told her actually that was a tactic used by abusers at the time. So she realized that she was sane. You know, sometimes you can doubt your reality, especially when adults deny. So you teach the children, nobody should see your private parts, or even ask to see them. Remember that story we said of Matt, who the teacher would make him shower, then he watches him. So nobody should see, nobody should touch, nobody should lick. Meaning, you also should not touch, see, or lick somebody's private parts. Please name them by name. Do not use nicknames. Do not. I know the temptation is strong to use nicknames, because when you use nicknames, you make the child feel like either you are uncomfortable to talk about it that way, or next time they'll be abused, they have no language to say. I've shared with some of you an experience where a girl, the family used to name the private parts of a girl Cookie. That's what they used to say, cover your cookie, cover your cookie. So they had an uncle living with them who used to lick her. So she would feel it's uncomfortable. She goes to school and tells the teacher, uncle licked my cookie. Uncle licked my cookie. The teacher says, it's good to share. We have taught you to share. It's good to share. True story. So it continued happening until one time she got an infection. She went to the doctor. As the doctor was examining, she asked what happened. Then she said, uncle licked my cookie. So she pointed. By the time the doctor is sharing with the parents, they said, yeah, we have actually been saying cookie. If this child had been taught the right language, the teacher would have easily picked that this is what is happening and maybe help the child before it got too far, okay? So they name by name, 3-4 years. By the time a child is 6 to 7 years, they need to know what sex is. Because you can use picture books. There are a set of books that are very helpful called Life. They're called Making Friends. It's a set of 5. You can get them if there's any literature evangelist here. So picture book. The book, I like it because it shows you from animals, flowers, pollination. It puts it very beautifully, godly, scientific, just factual. If a child asks you what sex is, respond just like the way you'd respond if a child asked you, what is this? You would say water. So just respond direct, clear, simple answers. Because in a child, sex does not evoke the emotions that it evokes in an adult. Because for you feel that way because of the hormones and everything. For a child, no. It's just simple. Just give a simple answer, So once you have taught the child what sex is from around 6-7 years, by the time they get to teenage, you're teaching them about LGBTQ. So you are moving from the normal to the abnormal. Let me call it that way. Normal to the abnormal. There are many children who have been introduced to homosexuality without knowing what it is, especially girls, because they have been taught, boys will make you pregnant, diseases, what? Then they go and the girls are teaching them exciting ways to explore their bodies. I have cases like that. And they're like, this is a fellow girl, I won't get pregnant, I won't get diseases, and it feels good actually. They continue. By the time they're realizing they were introduced to homosexuality, lesbianism, they didn't know what it was. But if they had been taught, they will actually reject, especially when we take children to all girls school, throughout, all boys school throughout, they are prone to homosexuality. Some are introduced actually without even knowing. Now, as the children are growing, sexuality education is not something you do and you're done and dusted. It is something you keep on revising over time. If your child is a teenager and you've never talked to them about sexuality education, you probably cannot begin telling them these are your private parts. They even know more than you do. So what you need now is to use a teachable moment. You can watch, like maybe you're seeing something in the paper, something in a book on teenage pregnancies. Maybe you begin from there. You say, what would you do if a friend shared that they are pregnant? Just an example. You need to begin from there. Now you can't. You have to use a teachable moment at the time. This week, a parent told me that their teenager and another teenager, during the camp meeting, they were seen by the caretaker with a boy in a corner somewhere. And the way they were talking, it's like there's something more. So she came and she was asking me, what do I do? How do I talk to my girl? Because they have been seen with that boy severally, and it's like there's something happening. So I asked her, have you talked to your daughter about relationships? And when she will be ready for relationship, she said no. So I said, then you cannot go asking or condemning her about relationships and you've never talked to her about it. So I said, maybe they have watched or seen about American kids dating at 9-11. So at 14, she's thinking she's too late. So I said, what you do now, begin from talking to her about relationships and what are your family values. Once you talk about family values and relationships, you can now go further later and say, by the way, during church, you were talking to a certain boy. Can you tell me what that was about? But first, you must talk to the child about relationships. When are they ready for relationships? What are your family values? For me, I've told my children, even my Nathaniel now is the one I talk to a lot, I tell him he's ready to get into a relationship after completing college or at the age of 25 and above. Beyond that, there is no discussion about relationships because he's not ready. Because the purpose as to why a Christian young person gets into a relationship is with the intention of getting married. So, if you're not ready to get married because financially, socially, spiritually, you're not ready, because below 25, it's a brain underworks. Your brain is maturing. Yeah, so most likely you'll make a wrong choice before then because your brain is maturing. So your brain is not mature. You are depending on me to buy for you your sanitary product. You are taking yogurt from my fridge. how do you then begin to say you are getting into a relationship? Most likely you want me to finance the date. That cannot work. So you are simply not ready. So we can only talk about it after then. And again, you cannot kill you say you can kill two birds with one stone, but you cannot do two things at the same time. You will lose one. So if you are in school, you are focusing and learning and acquiring skills as much as you can. Acquire skills when your brain is developing so that you're able to be self-reliant, emotionally stable, then you can get into a relationship because people are not going anywhere. After all, the beautiful, handsome ones are yet to be born. So that means then, if I was to get my child who is 22 now in a relationship, it's very clear that the family values are you're too young. So we are talking from a point of you have actually decided to go against the family values to get into a relationship. I want to let you know that you're not ready for the outcome. There will be consequences, and I'm not there. I'm not there. Because I have already told you my job has been done. And God will say to me on that day, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter ye into the joy of the Lord. Because I have told you, I've exposed you. Will I always control my children? Absolutely not. Will they always listen to me? They may never. But it's fine. I'm not communicating so that they can listen to me. Did I begin dating after 25? I didn't. Did I make mistakes? I did a lot. Do I regret? I highly regret. Do I want somebody else to regret like me? No. I don't want anybody else to regret like me. So then you have to communicate. So you are talking about relationships now. When are you ready for a relationship? Because you hear young people, I was talking to your pathfinders, and they are talking about, oh, maybe I'm approaching girls, and they are saying no to me. What can I do? I said, that is it. They need to say no to you. What do you mean approaching a girl? That's not the discussion at this age. You're not even ready. You're putting the cart before the horse. At what can I do? Sometimes I go to high school and boys will ask me, what can I do so that I can be attractive to girls? I said, you need to be ugly to them at this point. They don't need to admire you at this point because you're too young. Make your books admire you. That's what is required at this point, your books to admire. So you have to keep communication channels open. Any teachable opportunity you get, because it keeps changing. You can see you have communicated, then the next time this question comes, but if you have opened opportunity, the children can always reach to you. And if anything is happening and they are feeling like there's something weird or strange, it's easier for them to reach out to you and just say, so-and-so is looking at me in a way or doing something, I don't feel comfortable. Because they will always feel uncomfortable. It's just that sometimes when somebody has been made to doubt their reality, they keep doubting. You see, like for me, I told you, I just kept finding it's very weird that this person is coming, wants to buy me dinner. I'm like, really, this is weird? But I kept on saying, no. I'm thinking wrong of a man of God, So it didn't really have to get to that point, okay? Maybe I can pause here and take any questions or comments. Yeah. Any questions or comments? I'd be glad to respond to them. It's uncomfortably quiet. Okay, yes. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The other thing maybe that you can say, you talked about teaching kids about sex as
Yeah. So I will begin with the second part. I'll go back and forth because that's a good question. You cannot teach the subject because you have your own hang-ups. That is called sexual shame. So you have to deal with your sexual shame. That's why I said you ask yourself, the sexual shame that I'm carrying, is it because of something I heard, I read, I was told, or I experienced? It could be any of those. So most likely what you heard. Because for a lot of us, it was semi-threats. My mother just said 2 sentences. She said, you get pregnant, I kill you. You get AIDS, you die. So either way, we knew anything around sex is death. So that's it. We just knew sex, death. So you just run away because you know I get pregnant, I'm killed. That was like the worst thing ever. You get AIDS, you will die. And she says, my house is not a ward. So you will die in the forest, not here. You see, something like that. So in that way then, it was